Hello, everybody. Once again, my name is Kelsey. I am the marketing director here at AgroChem. Thank you so much for joining us today for the avian flu in dairy. We know that this is a really big topic, and we wanted to try to bring you all the information that we currently have. So on our call, we have John Welps and Todd Raymond, who are going to be sharing. I'll let them introduce themselves to you. If you have questions throughout this presentation, please feel free to use the questions and the chat section. You can use either one of those and go ahead and drop them in there, and I'll be watching that. And after everyone is done presenting, I'll ask the questions. So once again, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. And if you want to share them afterwards, please feel free to email them to me or your AgroChem representative. So, okay, Todd and John, let's take it over and discuss avian flu in dairy.
Thanks, Kelsey. I'm John Welps, the Southwest Area Sales Manager for AgroChem. I live just southwest of Amarillo, about an hour in Nazareth. So kind of from the place that's been kind of blamed for starting this, wrongly or rightly. So it's definitely a lot of experts around that you can go talk to at your local convenience store or Dairy Queen and get the lowdown on what's going on. But what we wanted to do today is kind of get all these thoughts together and everything that's going around and kind of present everything that is that we know to be true right now, and kind of not spread any more rumors or anything that might not be completely true so far. So that's kind of what we're doing today. If we want to go ahead and move to the next slide there. So what we want to start off is what is this threat? What are we doing here? We currently have herds from 8 states that have confirmed cases right now. And like I say, this is the latest info that we've gotten. And of course, it's an ever-changing thing right now, but we're continuing to investigate. But we've been fortunate enough to talk to a lot of people and be able to kind of funnel down everything that we've got going here. And you see the states here, of course, Texas and New Mexico there at the first, and reaching out there. And you can see that these 3 states, Texas, New Mexico, and Kansas, kind of make sense. They're close. There's a lot of cattle there that are within proximity, a lot of guys that raise heifers back and forth. And so that makes sense. But when you look at these states that are a good ways away from there, then that makes us scratch our head. But most of that has been confirmed that they have received cattle from this Texas and New Mexico area. So mainly Texas. So that's kind of the reasoning right now that we're operating off of right now, why some of those states like North Carolina might have this avian flu right now. And as we move down here, there's nothing that has been required or even talked about yet for as far as culling, full culling, or any need to, put animals down like we do in the other industries in the poultry. And this avian flu has not been fatal, has not proven to be that way. The most cattle are recovering fairly quickly from this, which is good. And that's not to lessen the impact economically that this could have on dairies, to say that in the least. But some good news there and positive news there as we're looking at this is where we're at right now and what it's doing to the dairy industry. And one thing to keep in mind, there is 18 states that have instituted these quarantines for hauling cattle across these state lines and bringing them in from these states right now. So that's something to think about if this is something where you're actually growing some of your cattle at and bringing them into a avian free zone right now. So that's something that you maybe need to do some further research on to make sure if you're going to be able to move your cattle the way you need to. One person in this area during this time has contracted the avian flu, and that was confirmed. Mild symptoms, fully recovered. He was working on a dairy, and so that's kind of the thought of where he got that from. In the history of avian flu, if we go back and we're talking to people with Quercia and everything else, and we can only find that 2 people in the U.S. have ever contracted the avian flu. So right now is not a current high-risk situation for to be transmitted to humans. And if it did, in these 2 cases, the symptoms were mild and recovered within a couple of days. And as we're looking at transmission, as that goes more and more, we keep as we look at this. What we want to continue to note that there is not much nose-to-nose transmission right now, and these so the evidence is possibly going towards milk or environmental factors of these cows getting this disease, and that's the way it's being transmitted. So that's something to keep in mind, but that's something we're also continuing to monitor and see where the evidence takes us there. And as we move along here to slide 3, is our milk supply safe? And this is something I've talked about every time. If I'm talking about something, this is what we always talk about. The FDA requests that U.S. producers separate the milk from the avian flu infected cows and destroy it, but it can be used for feeding calves and others if it is pasteurized. The all indications have told us if this milk is pasteurized, if it is processed in any ways, it is going to be safe. There hasn't been any evidence of milk getting out there that has been processed that has been dangerous at all. So we want to be able to preach that to people. And for the outside of the people of the dairy industry that don't understand this, these are the facts that we want to continue to stress, that heat, cooking, and pasteurizing makes it safe. And that goes for everything when it comes to poultry or any other facilities, meat, birds, and of course now with the dairy cows, we want to make sure that everybody knows that this milk is safe and everybody's keeping an eye on that. Scientists still say that there's no evidence to suggest that people can contact the virus by consuming food that has been treated, like you say, and properly cooked. So we're doing good there as long as we're handling this food safe, and that goes along with anything that might be. If we've done any food safety training at all, we know always to how to handle that food, and so it can be consumed safely. Avian flu is a highly contagious viral disease affecting several species of food producing birds, including our chickens and turkeys, of course, and that can even be included in our pet birds and our wild birds out there. What history has told us, a lot of the migratory birds is what's bringing this in. Maybe I've heard that the grackle bird, the black bird with the big V-shaped tail, is something that's really kind of being looked at right now as a possible carrier. I was out just the other day, and I could barely hear myself think because there were so many grackles up in the trees and stuff next to this place. So that's definitely a thought moving forward of if you're trying to eradicate or get rid of a certain bird that you're thinking about. That's been one. Occasionally, mammals, including humans, may contract the avian influenza. And then there's many of these virus strains. The one that we're looking at has been a mutation from the highly pathogenic avian influenza that's come into the dairy, and they're continuing to break down that DNA structure to get the exact mutation strain of it, but it seems to be copying that same strain, the HN5A. There's 2 types here. We got the low pathogenic and the high pathogenic. The low causes very few or no clinical signs in poultry, and of course the high pathogenic will cause severe clinical signs and high mortality rates among poultry. Unique detection of highly pathogenic avian influenza due to potential or mutation in poultry holdings during regular surveillance. There's a big need for precautionary measures. With this info and the current dairy representation, we're seeing mild results of infection from this variety. So it's attacking us in a way that, it's depressing milk for a little bit, but we are being able to bounce back from it. And our move is now, how are we going to mitigate this? How can we handle this and have it not spread and not be a permanent part of what's going on in the dairy? And that's what we're going to try to continue to talk about here. Todd, if you want to kind of come in and get in more of this technical stuff. Sure. With avian influenza and everybody know kind of where we're going from here and what we've got to offer to help these guys out, I'd appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah. So these the information that we have here and on the last slide that John just went over is actually from our partner company of Cursia. So we're looking at data that they've had from the poultry industry for over 10 years now, and looking at this this information and what we are looking at. So when we look at that data that John was just going over, we have information. This is data of the way it's been, and even though we've gone many years and there's been different variations, we're still within some of these same the H5N1s, and we're still in that same strain, still seeing a lot of the same results in poultry comings and goings of it being extreme and not extreme and seeing it. So we're really just getting into the dairy side of things now. Has it been there for a while? Is it just being seen now? There's a lot of information still flowing for all that. So if we're looking at what history shows us about the way this has worked, the influenza viruses can survive for over 30 days at 32 degrees at freezing, in 6 days at human body temperature. So we're almost a week and almost a month if we have a host or a carrier in this. So if you look at, let's use the example of, John mentioned grackles. If a grackle or some sort of bird or animal is carrying this and has died and is in a field or laying in a body of water or something that way, that can still be active for 30 days, even at freezing. It can be in human body temperature, living organisms and such that way for a week. And even decades in frozen ponds, days on hard surfaces and hours on our clothes and towels in the dairy and porous surfaces that way. So you can see some stability in the flu virus that's there that we're dealing with, and this is how it's able to move around and survive, even in the midst of when they're saying, well, is it nose to nose transfer? Are we transferring it from animal to animal? Are we transferring it in different ways? We have something that can be pretty hardy in this. So, but how do we inactivate the virus? So that's showing how it can still live and survive in the midst of it. How do we inactivate it? 30 minutes at 140 degrees. So the act of pasteurization is a quick heating and bringing up, keeping it at a heated temperature for the milk, and that is killing off the process that way of having the influenza virus in there. So you've got options with heat, acidic conditions. So if you get that to a good low pH, that can also be helpful. So if we look at our milking systems, a traditional CIP wash with acid bringing to a low pH and then sanitize to also add for that killing aspect of it. A traditional wash is going to do the job within our systems. So we don't see all the milk passing through the system. Is this a real concern? No, we can take care of it with a good wash and a good system that's there. Oxidizing agents, our PAA and different products that we will talk about that you can use your products to be able to do that. And then exposure to different disinfectants. And a couple of ones that we're going to talk about are Deptyl Q4 and OxyDiff. Some details on those, but those are two that we have that do have all of the avian flu registrations that you would need for the legality side of it as well. In the avian influenza, is not transmittable, as John brought up there about eating properly prepared eggs and poultry. So again, old information that they're putting out here to say, hey, overall the industry is safe. Yes, we've heard over the years a lot of birds having to have been destroyed and taken care of because of this virus, and a lot of that we don't have those kinds of extents in the dairy industry. But so far, our food plan, our food process is safe in everything that's going through, as long as we're cooking thoroughly and preventing cross-contamination between any raw and cooked foods that way. Same thing with our milk products. That pasteurization does take that process and make this safe for consumption. The next slide, Kelsey. So a couple of things as to why it's spreading. And again, you're hearing some repetitive stuff in here, and I think the point is we want to show why it's really happening, not to bring a fear or a problem in the midst of it, but to show more so that this is limited in certain areas, and to really make a point as to what some of the simple forms of this happening is. So again, looking at that last slide and putting it with this one here and showing that stability in the environment, the fact that it's good at low temperatures, it's good at body temperatures, it's stable on hard surfaces and such for days that's where the contagiousness is coming. So the transmission can occur with direct contact with the virus. So if you are picking it up from one of those cases of it's been on a surface or it's been on clothes, towels, or you're sharing it from place to place that way, that's where it can come from. It's also sensitive to specific biocides, so using the right products is key in the midst of this. And the thing to remember about this is we deal with a lot of bacteria within the dairy industry, but when we're talking viruses, it's a little different, as it can't multiply without a host. The bacteria can continue to multiply, but the virus isn't going to multiply without that host. You have to have the host factor. So it can sit on that surface or in that area, but it's not going to multiply without something to carry it. So strict biosecurity, hygiene measures are essential in those cases, that we can wipe it out. It's not going to grow. It's not going to continue unless we're giving it the host. By giving it the host, we're giving it those opportunities in extra animals on the farm or bacteria areas where there is living organisms to be able to host this virus and carry it through. So some things to watch for, some areas to look at on our dairies that we can consider. Water quality would be a big one. When we look at areas like John is mentioning, where he can hardly hear outside because of the amount of birds, or even where I live in upstate New York, and we look at the amount of migratory birds that pass through and what can be there. What are our water supply areas and what is contained in that? What bacteria do we have? What opportunity are we giving for growth and such and that? So if you don't have a good water quality program, treatment program, or something along that lines, it might be time to look for something in that to make sure that we're covering every base possible. The bird population in that, do you have a lot of birds there? Are you watching for ones that you may see the dead bird that you passed in the field or in the air, in somewhere on the facility? Be aware of those. Don't leave them. Make sure that we're getting that taken care of and controlling any population, especially if you're in some of the high concern areas that we have around the country right now. And then other animals on the dairy, even thinking of the barn cats and such that way, they're in there drinking the milk, and the milk that's getting dumped down the drain or disposed of could be that you're separating for treated or having some issues that way. So watching actions, not saying go get rid of all your barn cats, but basically saying keep an eye on, watch the animals, watch the birds, watch what's happening on your dairy, and look for things that are different than they have been in the past. So, and traffic, the traffic that's coming in and out of the dairy, the people that are coming in and out of the dairy could be coming from other farms, could be bringing things from other locations that way, or taking them from your farm to other places. So starting to control and manage that there's a lot to be said for even looking at that in a greater level that way. So the last thing on here was moving cattle from other locations. That's become a greater and greater practice as dairies get larger and larger, that we move calves or heifers off to other facilities, even halfway across the country. So it's a lot greater than sending it to the farm next door or down the road. We've got a lot of this transmission. This is where a lot of the things have happened. So if this turns into something larger than it is today, it could change the way we look at that some in the future. But looking at that moving of cattle from other locations and keeping an eye on making sure if there's any chance of contamination that we're quarantining, testing, checking, looking for other ways to maybe manage that as well. So how do we respond, and what can we at AgroChem do in the midst of this to help in this, and you as a dairy? Better cleaning procedures, making sure that we're being very thorough. If these things are living on the surfaces and in the corners, then we want to wipe these viruses out before they have a chance to get a host and get connected somewhere. So do as good as we can cleaning. The best way to get a disinfection, a sanitize, or to make our biosecurity programs work is to have a clean facility. If you are just trying to disinfect when there's a lot of organic matter there, you'll get a job done, but it won't be as good as if you have a good clean facility. So starting with a good cleaning, and then going to the disinfection and protection phases, making sure that we're putting things there and setting up the biosecurity programs that put the line of defenses in and put protocols in for vehicles and people coming into the dairy that way. So if we look at one of the slides that Kersey used in their presentations, we took those couple other things from. What you need is a working and reliable biosecurity program. So what are we talking about with a biosecurity program? We've got to do all kinds of detailed information, detailed work. No, this can be a pretty simple program: cleaning, disinfection, and protection. And some of the areas that we can look at, again, drinking water, vehicles, equipment, boot dips, gloves, if you're wearing gloves or not wearing gloves, and making sure that gloves are being washed or replaced in between animals, that we're sanitizing, disinfecting, and working through that. So we can make a program that can be as simple or as extensive as needed that way. So let's start with the cleaning. So when we look at the cleaning aspect of this, we've got a couple of products that we can recommend. Now, at AgroChem, we have a lineup of hundreds and hundreds of different available products that we can provide. But we're going to just show you a few today, because what we're looking for is what are the simple processes that we can follow to not make this a sky is falling event, but to look at it and say, how do we tackle this inexpensively, easily, and correctly? So these are a few items for a simple program. If you have a more extensive need or a lot more concerns in the midst of it, please feel free to get in touch with one of the AgroChem representatives and look at this in a greater fashion, and look at some of our other products if there's something you feel is more needed than these few that we have here. But when we look at a cleaning program, our foaming alkaline manual cleaner, it's a strong alkaline-based product, also available in a chloralkaline if you want to have some chlorine version to that as well. Great for cleaning the walls, helping to clean that parlor up and get all that organic matter off and bring things to a nice clean position and a clean level of where we're at that way. One that I did not list here, but also we have an acidic version of our manual cleaner. Works great on the stainless to get things shine and such as well. And that would be something that's going to bring a low pH level into it. The alkaline is going to do a far better job of going after heavy matter and load. But if you're looking at it saying, I think I can get away with it, we can bring in something along the lines of our acid version as well. Control 885 is a cleaner deodorizer that's gentle on most surfaces. So if you're looking for something that you can put in a boot wash, that you could put washing your car off with, that you could go at any of the things that are going to be going after a corrosive aspect of it. The Control 885 or the Cleanall are both good, gentle products that have good foaming, good cleaning abilities, and an ability to work well with it. And the nice thing about the Control 885, it has a lot of the similar build and properties of one of the other ones we'll talk about here shortly in our sanitizing side of it. It just doesn't carry the registrations or details with it that we have with the sanitizing version, but still in that same family. So. Next slide. So when we look at the disinfection and protection side, we're just going to show you a couple of products. And the reason we're showing just a couple of products, again, comes down to making this a simple change and a simple variation for you. And it also relates to the registrations. These are products that actually carry the avian flu registrations that will work well. Again, registrations that work in a foot bath, a boot wash or a foot bath system, for glove wash systems. It's registered for avian flu protection on for animal and hoof care equipment and systems that way. It's covered basically across the board, and with our Deptil Q4 quaternarium ammonium-based sanitizer, gives you some of the information here for the dilution rates and how we're using that. But again, gentle and safe on most surfaces. So if we look at a product that you can use in all kinds of areas, that's going to give you a good protection factor and have the registrations. So if there was ever a concern of legality in what you've done to try and do this, you have a great product here that can be used in all kinds of aspects with all kinds of registration coverage on that. So great product to work for that. And then we also have those couple of cleaners built the same way. So, next slide. The other product that we have is OxyDiff. So OxyDiff is a peracetic acid that's a 5% peracetic acid product. And again, this one carries the avian flu registrations. So it has all that's needed to be able to cover that. You can see in the features and benefits, I mean, this is even effective against C. diff and some of the other really difficult products or difficult virucides or viruses and such to deal with getting after those C. diff spores. So the disinfection, deodorizing, animal housing facilities, all those registrations apply to this one, and you have the kill level of a peracetic acid product. And when you look at, okay, what is peracetic acid? You have a product there that is at the top of the scale when it comes to the efficacy and ability to kill and to work very, very well. And it is a very safe for the environment product in the way that it breaks down to essentially there are no residuals that are leaving anything in our systems to cause a problem that way. So you have a great product there. We have to be a little bit more careful with this one when it comes to corrosive nature and such on the areas that are corrosive. So if you need something really gentle, go ahead and use the Deptil Q4. If you need that real powerhouse, OxyDiff is the one to use. And again, speak to your AgroChem representative, and you will be able to find the best fit for your particular needs. And I think these two products are a great opportunity for us to show our partnerships with us being part of the Curcia family and having a company like Biosan with the peracetic acid products to show the powerhouse effect of what we can have here in just a couple of products with the branding that we have through the multiple brands that we're able to work with today. So if we just break down biosecurity a little bit, if we look at this in a kind of a divide and conquer aspect of it, we have a couple of different ways to go through this. We have the internal and the external forces that we really need to look at and to be concerned with what we're going with. So when we talk internal, we're talking your staff, the people in the dairy, the things in the dairy like water quality, the parlor, the barns, the different areas that way, and your employees. So what are we going to focus on biosecurity with that? We're going to focus on the water quality. When we look at our parlor, how much activity is going in and out of that parlor and where are they going on the dairy, and then coming back in and working with the cows again. We may need to start to look at this as a clean environment and treat it like we would going to a hospital, or let's even look milk, cheese plants, food plants of any sort. When you go into those, you can go as far as the offices, but the minute you get into the production areas, you have to wash up, you have to put your hairnet on, your beard net, cover yourself in whatever they tell you to put on, your boots, everything before you can enter, because they want to make sure that environment stays free from any contaminants to keep that food supply safe. So do we need to go to the extent of hair nets, beard nets, and a full scrub down and wash down like a surgeon would going into a hospital situation? Maybe not to that extent, but I think we could look a little bit more like, where is your staff going? Where are people coming in and out? Are they making sure that they're washing their boots in and out with a disinfectant water every time? Even if we have contamination that is possibly spread through milk, which is some of the things that we're hearing, that there is some cow-to-cow spread. So there's been a lot of talk that it's not necessarily nose to nose, but I think there's still some variations of that we may hear more as time goes on. But it's more from the milk, from the locations of the things where it is left on a towel or on clothing or in a location, then the next cow is able to pick it up. So if we look at that, we want to take our parlor where we're interacting with that milk, where we're getting the residues all over the parlor. We want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, protecting our team, and protecting the cows from any sort of contamination. So if you have some or suspect some on your dairy, putting these extra efforts in and making sure a glove wash, more multiple glove changes, looking at the milking units and sanitizing milking units in between infected cows so there's no chance of spread. We want to make that more of a clean environment going forward. The gloves especially, make sure you're wearing that everyone's wearing gloves and that they're being changed often or washed often. And then laundry. If we are carrying this in an environment where we have the opportunity to carry on clothing, well, what are we doing with our laundry? We're putting these towels in that have manure and milk and all kinds of possibility for carrying this. So using a good laundry detergent, and a lot of guys say, it's got to have a sanitizer in the laundry detergent. Well, here's something to think about. If you put your laundry detergent in and you are running some rinse cycles after that, and your laundry detergent had your sanitize in it in the beginning, you're taking the chance of reigniting that bacteria or re-entering something to it again with those additional rinse cycles. So when we're looking at this virus, how do we get rid of it? By the low pH option, but in this case, heat or sanitizing, disinfecting, being able to take care of it that way. So make sure your laundry, your towels are dried so that we're using heat and the time and the heat together to be able to neutralize this virus, or make sure you're putting a sanitized cycle in later in your wash so that it's covering through those rinse cycles and making sure we're taking care of it to the greatest need that way. And in this case, Deptil Q4 would be a good product to put in for the sanitized side of it there. Be a great product to use for your glove washes, for your boot washes, sanitizing the possible spread via units and such that way. So next slide. So when we look at the external side, people coming in, feed trucks, veterinarians, service staff bringing their equipment in that's been on other dairies, the hoof trimmer that's bringing in his equipment and handling your cows, making them aware of your new protocols and how you want your cow movement and cows handled, having some protocols for that. And then the vehicles, cattle haulers, the feed trucks, manure handling, and any of that. Are you going to go through efforts to rinse them down with a sanitizer, or at least, especially maybe after you're moving animals from location to location, to take the time to rinse them off and do some sanitizing that way? Really key. And forming a line of separation. So that's some information. There is a website that we're showing here called Secure Milk Supply. They have a whole section. If you look at the link that we're showing here, they have a whole section on biosecurity and really kind of lay out some good thoughts for a dairy as to how to put this together. And one of the things they have on there is putting in a line of separation or a stop point of saying nobody beyond this position or place without checking in and following our protocols, washing in, clean clothes, boots, whatever you feel is the level that you need to do. But putting that line of separation in, it's key factor of being able to separate that. So, next slide. So if we break these down and we look at a couple of protocols for each of the areas that we just discussed, water treatment, external, internals, parlor, and such that way, we'll just take a minute to go through these quick again. So water treatment, excuse me, there's a lot of different options for treating full farm water systems. So I don't want to get into the details of we've got to do this, we've got to do that. This is really a per farm basis of finding what's best for you, what's best for your farm, what's best for your particular conditions as to what you're going to need. So speak to your AgroChem rep, get your team from your dealership that's going to help you to get that done and find the best options for your situation. But a couple of the other areas that we can really look at, you want to start by having that water disinfection program. But at this point, let's really focus on parlor disinfection when it comes to water treatment, making sure that our drop hoses or that we have some rinse tanks for some rinsing off units, wiping off things, taking care of that, and making sure that we're treating water in a fashion to be able to use it and sanitize with it. The other area, ensuring cow waters are clean. If we're having issues with possible other animal interactions, are there birds up overhead of your waterers? Do you have any evidence of bird droppings and such around it? Are the cats and other animals on the farm drinking from these, where we could be passing some opportunity for the virus to spread that way? Make sure they're clean. Also, clean of debris and algae and bacteria. That's a program that is always in place to say, hey, if you want to put that water to your cows, you should be able to drink out of it yourself. And if we look at this and we're looking at a host, what does it take to be a host for the virus? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a specialist in that sense to be able to get into a lot of detail, but it's a living organism that's going to carry it. And what is bacteria, algae, all these different things? They're living organisms. So the more of those we can take away and keep this sanitized and clean, the better off we're going to be. And then just, again, pushing the fact of the Deptyl Q4 or OxyDiff works great on this parlor disinfection for any of that. Whether you're using drop hoses, foamers, or disinfection tanks, we can provide that with one or other products with a good security system for you. Next slide. So reiterating the internal protocols, focusing on your employees and interaction points within the dairy. Again, treat the milk house and parlor as a hospital area, clean area. Treat it like a milk plant type of environment. Have that disinfection program. Take care of your laundry. And then let's not forget about the barns, cast facilities, bedding. How are we going to manage the contaminants and keep them separated? When we're going through the dairy, if we're having some possibilities here, I believe so far most of the health in the cattle hasn't been across widespread of all of them. It's been a lot of the older cows and such, not the youngers, that have had the issue. So are we going to do a little better job of maybe separating our staff or separating the contaminant points and putting boot washes in clean zones to be able to break this up? So take a look at thoughts on those lines of separation and different ideas to put that together. So the external, again, looking at all of those outside influences, veterinarians, service, hoof trimmers, if they're carrying any equipment, make sure their equipment's clean, make sure they're scrubbing in and out, and checking in so you know who's coming in and out. And they need to wait. If they're interacting with cows, make sure they're changing their gloves off often or washing them, sanitizing them. And if they can do it, I mean, when you're looking at this, if they're going from farm to farm, location to location, they need to come in with clean clothing or some sort of coverall that can be rinsed and washed off and protected. So they're keeping themselves protected and protecting your dairy as well. So again, you can look at that secure milk supply in their biosecurity pages and see what's there. The vehicles, put some sort of vehicle program in place and limit your cattle movements as much as you can. We understand that's part of today's world to be having them move from location to location, but make sure those places they're going are following the same protocols that you're doing, and ask them to jump on board with that. So in the parlor, same thing again. Last time, I'm going to push on this one again. The Deptil Q4 and the OxyDiff, gloves, boots, clothing, all of that, making sure that you have a good, clean environment. So closing, there's a whole lot that's really still unknown about the current strain in cattle. We don't want to bring fear, but we want to show some solutions, some ideas, and to really show we can combat this, we can make things better, and possibly push this out of our issues for the future. But I think really where this is going to come is putting those biosecurity programs and following through and having a good protocol set in place. So reminder, the milk supply is safe. The human risk is extremely minimal at this point. We definitely want to still be watching, and we still want to throw all these protection factors in play. But overall, this is a great industry with a great bunch of team members from those on the dairy and off of the dairy. And let's continue to have it being that way by working together to get rid of these viruses and things once and for all. So thanks everyone for joining us on this. I believe we do have a couple of questions that have come in, and if you have any, please put them in. We'll see what we can do to answer them.
Okay, so we do have two questions. The first question is, do they, meaning the cows, recover back to 100%?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's something I always think about with anything. When you have an animal out there that you're raising for production, especially, it's kind of like an athlete. When they get sick, how are they going to recover from this? It's hard to say that and to say yes or no, but this is not being reported, and it's not being represented as a respiratory disease with these cattle, and that's what the veterinarians are saying. And so when I'm thinking about if cattle are going to be able to respond and get better, let's say 100% or whatever, the one thing that I always think about is respiratory, and especially out here in West Texas or Kansas or Oklahoma, that's always what gets our cattle out here. And and that's a good news in ways. That's why they're not shedding a lot of these this virus amongst other cows there, because it's not acting like a respiratory disease. And if it can stay out of the lungs that way and not hurt the respiratory system, just my own horse sense would tell me that we're going to get those cows will have a pretty good recovery rate. To say 100% or not, I can't go there. But if anybody, Todd, if you want to add to that or anything, that's my thoughts on that.
No, I think you've said it pretty good, John. I think when it comes to a full recovery, I mean, we're looking at this in some of the, from everything that I've read and seen. And again, I'm not an expert, but I'm trying to make myself as educated as I can with the information that's out there. And if we're seeing this in older animals, if we look at this like all these wonderful viruses, diseases, bacteria that have plagued us for the last few years, that we've all really gone through have affected our lives. What was the age group of people that were trying to be protected in the midst of this? It was the older population, because they may struggle more with a virus or a bacteria attacking their system. So I think if we look at it in that sense, most of these cows, it seems, as John put, we're getting recovery. We've got respiratory system. We've got all these different aspects to look at. But some of these, they're having that possible 20% milk drop across the farm, and then it comes back. I'm sure there's a few that are affected that are not going to come back to the same level. It may eventually be like, well, we lost a little bit of time or energy or life off of that animal in the midst of it. But overall, I think the good news is that when we go from a level of production, it dropped, and then we can say in short order we're back up to the same level of production. Overall, it's really not a long-term effect in the midst of it. So.
Okay, great answer, guys. I hope that answered your question. If you still need clarification or anything like that, please feel free to ask a follow-up question in the chat or reach out to us afterwards, and I know we can discuss that further. Okay, the next question is there any proof or disproof of building immunity after affected? I think we kind of hit on that a little bit, but anything you guys would like to add to that?
The only thing I was going to add to that is I did look up stuff with that, and we do already have USDA pushing and going through the Agricultural Research Service, and they are looking into the possibility of vaccines. So I feel like our hypothesis now is, if there's a vaccine out there that we can do to build immunity, I'm sure you can build immunity somehow in the field as well, I would think.
Okay, Todd, anything to add to that before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I agree with John, and because I don't have a DVM or any other fancy letters after my name, I really don't know if I want to answer that question in a full level of being able to say for certainty as to what we're doing. As with all flus, I would hope that there's some sort of build of immunity to this as time goes on. But with the constant variations in the strains, and the fact that if we look at just in our own lives, we've been battling one form of a flu or another for many, many decades, and probably centuries now. So if we look at that, yep, we'll build some immunities, and then there'll be something, a little variation to the virus that we'll probably have to combat again. So the better the programs we put in to keep these things away, the better off we'll be.
Okay. The next question that I have is, do you know if the government is taking any action against dairies that confirm they have the virus on their farms?
I do not. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah. So if we do the search of all the great search engines and start looking for that kind of thing, we'll get a lot of varying information. But I think the one thing that you start to see, and we commented on it in here, is like the FDA recommends that there's separation of cows. We're seeing a lot of wording like that. And because it's not a large number of, this isn't the poultry industry where someone's coming in and saying, you have to get rid of all of these birds and all evidence of them and start over again. We're not at that level. So I don't know at this point whether we have any true interaction in the midst of it. I would say if you tried to cross some of those states that you have to pull your truck in for the any animals or produce products that you're carrying, yeah, there's going to be some enforcement if you can't prove that your cows are going to be quarantined or that they're coming from a state that there's an issue. There's probably going to be some residual things that way, but overall, I don't think it's a huge enforcement to this point. So.
Okay, thank you, Todd. John, did you have anything to add to that?
No, the one thing that we presented earlier was about the movement of cattle from one state to another. That's been the most aggressive thing I've seen from, I guess it wouldn't be USDA, wouldn't be national, but from at least state agencies that we've seen so far.
Okay, I hope that was helpful with your question. And then the final question that I have right now, and we do have a couple more minutes, so if anybody has any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat still. But the final question I have at this moment is, does it affect beef cattle at the same frequency as dairy cattle?
I actually talked to a couple of feedlot guys that are considered well plugged into the industry the other day. So just keep this in between us. This is kind of one of those things when you're drinking coffee and talking to people, but they didn't seem worried at all about it, and they haven't been getting much correspondence about it from their organizations, and it doesn't seem to be affecting them right now. In our area, they're getting a lot of dairy calves and stuff, the steers and everything. But as of right now, that was kind of their attitude. Right now, they kind of acted like it was a dairy thing right now. The feedlot guys, anyways.
John, if you can keep connecting with those experts at the corner market and the Dairy Queen, I think we're going to be able to come back at this with more information as it gets built as time goes on. So, and I say that in all joking, in the sense of that yeah, when we look at where things are going, where things are coming, there's a lot of this is what I hear, this is what I see in the midst of it. And we're doing our best to put that information together. But we definitely want to say, I think we have some good information here. I think we have some basic knowledge for you. But keep in touch with those in your market, in your industry, your dealers, your local guys, our team, as we can help as we can, your veterinarians in those cooperatives and extensions that can get you the information you need for your markets as well. So.
That's great. Thank you, guys. Okay, we just had another question come in. If a farm wants to sanitize or dump the units in between milking of cows, whether in the parlor or the hospital bar, which product would be the most beneficial for that?
So for dunking and washing units in any location and any method that way, if we look at ones that have the avian flu registrations and to look at it for full protection in that sense, you are looking at the Deptil Q4 because it's gentle on everything. We can use it on all different parts and pieces, and it carries those registrations. So it has some good cleaning effect to it. Very good product in that sense. There's a lot of other sanitizers, a lot of other lines of products that are out there that you can read through and see. People say this works, that works, other things work. But if it really comes down to you need that reassurance of registration, that's the product for you. We have a full line of many other products that we can use that'll kill many other viruses, many other aspects that just don't carry this registration as well. That as time goes on, we'll see where things go and what we can do. But there may be some other recommendations in there as well. But today I would say Deptil Q4 would be the one that you would use.
Great. Thank you. I hope that answered all of your questions. I do just want to mention that we will be trying to continue to get information out on this as it's kind of developing. We're going to try to do our best to remain informed. So if you don't follow us on Facebook, I recommend that you follow us because we'll be posting about any upcoming webinars, as well as just sharing any up-to-date information or chances for you to learn that information that we have as we go about this. Thank you all so much for joining us. Todd and John, any closing thoughts?
Yes, there was one thing I left out on my talk that was in my notes. I just wanted to share it because it's good news a little bit. And it's from a scientist. And she stated that cows are not hosts for influenza A. And what that means is right now, so the scientific community is thinking that this bird flu in the cows is not going to be able to spawn any more new or dangerous versions. And so I think that's something to hopefully that stays true as we go along, where not more things are coming out as compared to if this was in a pig barn or something like that. So they're thinking kind of this cattle thing will not be able to spawn new versions of this and maybe shorten the duration of it. That's the hypothesis anyways from this thing. I just wanted to share that.
It's great info, John. And I think the one thing that I would share is all the information that we see out there is this is not the beginning of the next pandemic. So let's not rush to overly large, huge concern that this is the next end of the world event. This is just an event that we need to manage and get through. And if we do it correctly, it won't be too big of a bump for us. So.
Great. Thank you Thank you everyone for joining us. That is the end of our questions. So that is the end of our webinar. As I said, I encourage you to reach out to your AgroChem rep with any other questions. Follow us on Facebook for the most up-to-date information. Thank you all for joining us today, and I hope that you all have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.